My parents chose my sister's dinner party over my 30th birthday celebration. But what I did next shocked them completely. I'd been planning my birthday for months, booked a restaurant, invited extended family. Then Emma announced her impromptu dinner party for the same night. Without hesitation, my parents canceled on me. Emma's event is more important, they said. That's when I made a decision. I used my life savings, $180,000, to buy something that would change everything forever. What happened next exposed their true nature and gave me the freedom I never knew I needed. Growing up as Rebecca Martinez, I thought I had the perfect family. Dad worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown, methodical and reliable, always home by 6:30 sharp. Mom was a registered nurse at the local hospital, the kind of woman who'd bring homemade cookies to every PTA meeting and never missed a school play. We lived in a modest 2-story colonial in the suburbs, white picket fence and all. From the outside, we looked like something straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. But every perfect family has its secrets, and ours was hiding in plain sight. Emma, my younger sister by 4 years, was what my parents called their special one. While I excelled at being reliable, good grades, clean room, never caused trouble, Emma was the artist, the free spirit, the one with real talent. Her paintings covered our refrigerator, her dramatic performances filled our living room, and her dreams were always the ones worth investing in. I didn't mind it, not really. At least, that's what I told myself for 30 years. Being the dependable older sister felt like a role I was born to play. When Emma needed art supplies, I'd give her half my allowance. When she wanted to take that expensive summer art camp, I'd babysit neighbors' kids to help pay for it. When she struggled in math, I'd spend my Friday nights tutoring her instead of hanging out with friends. "Rebecca just gets it," Mom would say, ruffling my hair with pride. "She understands family comes first." And I did understand. Or I thought I did. Family meant sacrifice. Family meant putting others' needs before your own. Family meant being the quiet one so the talented one could shine. The pattern was so subtle, so woven into the fabric of our daily lives, that I almost didn't notice it. Almost. Emma's art shows always took priority over my academic achievements. Her bad days required family rallies while my struggles were met with, "You're strong enough to handle it." Her successes were celebrated with dinner out. Mine were acknowledged with a quick, "Good job, honey," before the conversation shifted back to whatever Emma was working on. But I was 30 now, working as a marketing coordinator at a growing tech startup, with my own apartment and my own life. I thought things would be different. I thought finally, this milestone birthday would be about me. I'd spent 2 months planning it. Not just any birthday party, but a real celebration at Bella Vista, that upscale Italian restaurant downtown with the exposed brick walls and the wine cellar that doubled as a private dining room. I'd reserved the space, planned the menu, sent out invitations to 15 family members and close friends. This wasn't some thrown-together gathering. This was my official entry into my 30s, and I wanted it to be special. The invitations went out 6 weeks early. Beautiful cream cardstock with gold lettering. Join Rebecca Martinez as she celebrates 3 decades of life. I'd even hired a photographer to capture the evening, something I could look back on years from now and remember as the night I truly felt celebrated by the people who mattered most. Mom and Dad RSVP'd immediately. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," Dad had said over Sunday dinner. 30 years! Can't believe my little girl is all grown up." Emma had smiled and nodded, promising to wear something birthday-worthy and maybe even bring her latest boyfriend to meet the family. Everything was perfect, until 3 weeks before the party when Emma made her announcement. "I have incredible news!" She burst through the front door during our usual Sunday family dinner, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Gallery Morrison wants to showcase my mixed media series. They're hosting an opening reception, and it could change everything for my career." The energy in the room shifted immediately. Mom dropped her fork. Dad leaned forward in his chair, and suddenly Emma was the center of the universe again. The date? The same night as my birthday party. "Oh, honey, that's amazing!" Mom gushed, jumping up to hug Emma. "A real gallery showing. This could be your big break." "When did this happen?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. I mean, how long have you known about this? Just today. Emma practically bounced in her chair. The curator called this morning. Apparently, another artist had to pull out last minute, and they remembered my portfolio from last year. It's incredibly short notice, but these opportunities don't come around often. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Emma, that's wonderful. But you know that's the night of my birthday party, right? The one we've been planning for 2 months? The room went quiet. Emma's face fell slightly, but it was Mom who spoke first. Oh, Rebecca, surely you can move your party. This is Emma's chance at a real career breakthrough. Birthday parties happen every year, but gallery showings? Mom. I set down my water glass carefully, fighting to keep my hands steady. I've already paid deposits. The venue, the catering, the photographer. People have made plans. Some are coming from out of state. Well, can't you just call them and explain? Dad chimed in, his tone suggesting this was the most reasonable solution in the world. I'm sure everyone will understand that Emma has this amazing opportunity. It's not that simple. My voice was getting higher, and I hated how desperate I sounded. This isn't just some casual get-together. I've been planning this for months. It's important to me. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Maybe we could do both, like split the evening? Emma, don't be ridiculous, Mom said firmly. You can't leave your own gallery opening, and the family should be there to support you. This could launch your entire career. She turned to me with that patient smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. Rebecca, sweetheart, you're 30 years old. Surely you understand that Emma needs our support right now more than you need a birthday party. The words hit me like a slap, more than I needed a birthday party, as if wanting my family to celebrate my milestone birthday was somehow selfish or immature, as if 30 years of life wasn't worth one evening of their time when weighed against Emma's latest opportunity. I understand that this is important for Emma, I said slowly, choosing each word carefully. But this is important to me too. I've never asked for much, and I've planned this for months. Can't we find another way? Rebecca. Dad's voice carried that tone of finality I remembered from childhood. Family supports family. Emma has worked hard for this moment, and we're going to be there for her. You can have another birthday party anytime. Anytime. As if birthdays were interchangeable, as if the significance of turning 30 could be replicated with a rain check, as if I was so unimportant that my presence at my own celebration was optional. What if I moved my opening to Saturday night instead? Emma offered quietly. For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Absolutely not, Mom said sharply. Emma, you don't reschedule a gallery opening. Do you have any idea how unprofessional that would be? How it would look to the curator? And there it was. Emma's professionalism mattered. Emma's reputation mattered. Emma's feelings mattered. But mine? Mine were an inconvenience to be managed. I understand, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll figure something out. The relief on their faces was palpable. Dad reached over and patted my hand. That's my sensible girl. We knew you'd understand. Sensible. That word followed me home to my apartment, echoing in my head as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the beautiful invitations I'd spent hours choosing. Sensible Rebecca, always understanding, always accommodating, always putting everyone else's needs first. I started making phone calls. First to the family members who'd planned to drive in from neighboring states, then to friends who'd already arranged babysitters, then to the restaurant to see about rescheduling. But Bella Vista was booked solid for the next 3 months, and the photographer was already committed to another event the following weekend. The carefully orchestrated celebration I'd envisioned began to crumble, piece by piece. By Thursday night, I was eating dinner alone at the Italian restaurant where my birthday party should have been happening. I'd kept the reservation, partly out of spite, and partly because I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in my apartment watching Emma's gallery opening unfold on social media. The waitress, a kind woman in her 50s, kept checking on me with increasingly concerned looks. Special occasion? She'd asked when I arrived, noting the single place setting at a table clearly meant for celebration. Birthday. I'd answered simply, and something in my voice must have warned her not to ask about the missing guests. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed constantly with updates from the opening. Emma posing next to her paintings, Mom and Dad beaming with pride in the background, extended family members I'd invited to my party now clustered around Emma at her moment of triumph. The captions were full of words like, "so proud," and "incredible talent," and "family support." Not one person mentioned that they were supposed to be celebrating with me instead. That night, sitting in my car outside the restaurant, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I had spent 30 years being the supporting character in everyone else's story. The reliable sister, the understanding daughter, the one who would always be fine because she was strong enough to handle disappointment. But I wasn't fine. I was tired. Tired of being taken for granted. Tired of my feelings being dismissed. Tired of watching everyone else's dreams take priority over my basic desire to feel valued by my own family. I drove home through the quiet streets, past houses glowing with warm light where families were probably having normal conversations about normal things, not calculating whose needs mattered more, not ranking whose dreams deserved investment, not explaining to 30-year-old daughters why their birthday celebrations were less important than their sister's career opportunities. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and started browsing real estate websites, not really knowing what I was looking for, just needing to imagine a different kind of life. A life where my choices mattered, where my happiness was worth prioritizing, where I didn't have to compete for basic consideration from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And that's when I found it. A 3-bedroom farmhouse on 2 acres of land, 45 minutes outside the city. The photos showed a wraparound porch, hardwood floors, and windows that looked out over rolling hills instead of neighboring houses. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It was everything my parents had always said they wanted when they retired someday. The asking price was $180,000. I had exactly $180,000 in my savings account, accumulated over 8 years of careful budgeting and delayed gratification. Money I'd been saving for a house down payment, or maybe graduate school, or some undefined future that had always seemed too far away to plan for concretely. Before I could talk myself out of it, I called the listing agent. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The real estate agent, Sarah, had agreed to show me the farmhouse that afternoon. As I drove through the winding country roads, past fields dotted with wildflowers and old oak trees, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed: excitement about my own future. The house was even more beautiful in person. Sarah met me at the front gate, a cheerful woman in her 40s who immediately understood why I'd fallen in love with the property from the photos alone. The wraparound porch was sturdy and inviting, perfect for morning coffee and evening sunsets. Inside, the hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon light, streaming through large windows that framed views of the surrounding countryside like living paintings. The previous owners were an elderly couple who moved closer to their children. Sarah explained as we walked through the spacious kitchen with its farmhouse sink and vintage cabinetry. They maintained everything beautifully. New roof last year, updated electrical, well and septic in excellent condition. I ran my hand along the smooth granite countertops, imagining myself cooking breakfast while looking out at the meadow beyond. The master bedroom upstairs had a reading nook by the window, and I could picture myself there on Sunday mornings, coffee in hand, finally having space to think my own thoughts without interruption. The other 2 bedrooms would make perfect office space or guest rooms, Sarah continued. But I barely heard her. I was already seeing myself here, not as someone's reliable sister or understanding daughter, but just as Rebecca, a woman who deserved a beautiful space to call her own. "I want to make an offer," I said suddenly. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Don't you want to think about it? Maybe bring family to see it? These are big decisions." "No," I said firmly. "I've been thinking about this my whole life without realizing it. Full asking price, cash offer, 2-week closing." The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. In 30 years, I'd never made an impulsive decision this significant. But as I signed the preliminary paperwork in Sarah's car, I felt more certain than I'd ever felt about anything. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of inspections, paperwork, and late-night second-guessing. I told no one about the purchase. Not my coworkers, not my friends, and definitely not my family. Every time doubt crept in, which was often, usually around 3 in the morning, I reminded myself of that birthday dinner alone at Bella Vista, of the casual way my parents had dismissed months of planning, of Emma's gallery opening photos where everyone looked so happy to be celebrating her while I sat forgotten. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. I took the day off work, telling my boss I needed a personal day. As I sat in the lawyer's office signing document after document, my hand shook slightly. $180,000, my entire safety net, transferred in a matter of minutes. "Congratulations, Ms. Martinez," the lawyer said, handing me a set of keys. "You're officially a homeowner." I drove straight to the house, letting myself in through the front door that was now mine. The emptiness felt full of possibility. I walked through each room slowly, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors, planning where furniture would go, imagining how I'd decorate each space. Over the weekend, I made my first furniture purchases: a bed, a small dining table, basic necessities. I wasn't trying to furnish the entire house at once. I just wanted to make it livable. But I also splurged on one thing: a professional photographer. "I want to capture the house in its best light," I told Marcus, the photographer I'd hired. "Both interior and exterior shots, and some of me in different rooms. Make it look like a home, not just a house." Marcus was talented and intuitive, understanding immediately the feeling I wanted to convey. He captured the golden afternoon light streaming through the kitchen windows, the cozy reading nook upstairs, the expansive view from the front porch, and he took dozens of photos of me, not posed or artificial, but natural shots of me looking genuinely happy in my new space. That evening, I sat on my new front porch with a glass of wine, scrolling through the photos on Marcus's camera. I looked different in these pictures, relaxed, content, like a woman who belonged exactly where she was. I chose the perfect photo for social media: me sitting at my new kitchen table, natural light illuminating my genuine smile with the beautiful view visible through the window behind me. I crafted the caption carefully: "The best gift for myself." After 30 years, I finally have a space that's completely mine. Sometimes the most important investments we make are in our own happiness. Here's to new chapters and beautiful beginnings. New house in our country life, our best gift ever. Invest in yourself. I scheduled the post for Sunday evening, prime engagement time, and waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, I had dozens of likes and comments from friends, coworkers, and acquaintances. "Gorgeous house. You deserve this. So proud of you. What an amazing accomplishment." The outpouring of support and excitement was intoxicating. These people, some of whom I barely knew, were celebrating my achievement more enthusiastically than my own family had celebrated my birthday. But I knew the real test was coming. Sure enough, my phone rang at 8:47 p.m. Emma's name flashed on the screen. "Rebecca, what the hell is this post?" she said without preamble, her voice tight with something between shock and indignation. "Did you really buy a house? How is that even possible?" "Hello to you too, Emma," I said calmly, settling deeper into my new porch chair. "Yes, I bought a house. It's beautiful, isn't it?" "But how? When? Why didn't you tell anyone? Mom and Dad are going to freak out when they see this." "I used my savings," I said simply. "And I didn't tell anyone because it was my decision to make." I could hear Emma moving around, probably pacing in her apartment. "Your savings? All of it? Rebecca, this is insane. You can't just buy a house on impulse." "It wasn't impulse," I lied smoothly. "I've been planning this for a while." "But what about emergencies? What about your future? What if something happens and you need that money?" The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma, who had never saved more than a few $100s in her life, was lecturing me about financial responsibility. Emma, whose art supplies I'd helped pay for, whose rent I'd covered during lean months, whose emergencies had always somehow become family emergencies requiring collective financial support. "I'm 30 years old, Emma. I think I can manage my own finances." "I'm calling Mom and Dad," she said abruptly, and hung up. I sat in the peaceful quiet of my new front porch, watching fireflies begin to dance across the meadow, and waited. The call came 43 minutes later. Dad's number, but I could hear Mom's voice in the background before he even spoke. "Rebecca Ann Martinez, what on earth have you done?" Dad's voice carried that particular tone of parental disapproval I hadn't heard since I was 12 and accidentally broke Mom's favorite vase. "I bought a house, Dad, a beautiful house that I love." "Without consulting us? Without even mentioning it? How could you make such a major decision without talking to your family?" "Because it's my life and my money," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm 30 years old. I don't need permission to buy a house." "Permission isn't the point." Mom's voice came closer to the phone. She'd probably grabbed it from Dad. "The point is that this is reckless and selfish. You've spent every penny you have on some whim." "It's not a whim, Mom. It's an investment in my happiness." "Your happiness?" Mom's voice reached that particular pitch that meant she was genuinely angry. "What about Emma's happiness? What about our happiness? Do you have any idea how worried we are about Emma's financial situation? She's a struggling artist, Rebecca. She needs security, and instead of helping your sister, you've blown your entire nest egg on." "On what? Some fantasy about living in the country?" And there it was. The expectation that had been lurking beneath the surface my entire life, finally spoken out loud. My savings weren't really mine. They were a family resource, available for Emma's needs whenever they arose. "Emma is not my responsibility," I said quietly. "She's your sister." Dad had clearly taken the phone back. "Family takes care of family. You know Emma struggles financially. You know she could use help getting established. And instead of being there for her, you've selfishly spent everything on yourself." "The way you were there for me on my birthday?" The words came out before I could stop them. Silence on the other end of the line. Then Mom's voice, cold and sharp. "That's completely different, and you know it. Emma's gallery opening was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And my 30th birthday was once in a lifetime too, but that didn't seem to matter." "Don't be dramatic, Rebecca. You can have a birthday party any time." "But I can't have my 30th birthday any time, can I?" I stood up from my chair, pacing to the edge of the porch. I can't get back the feeling of being important enough for my own family to prioritize. I can't undo sitting alone at that restaurant while you all celebrated Emma. "We had no choice." Mom's voice was getting higher. "Emma's career—" "There's always a choice, Mom. You chose Emma. You've been choosing Emma for 30 years, and now I'm choosing myself." Another silence. Then Dad's voice, attempting to sound reasonable. "Look, Rebecca, we understand you're upset about the birthday situation. Maybe we could have handled it better. But this house purchase, it's done now, but you need to think about making this right." "Making what right?" "Emma needs this house more than you do," Mom said, her voice carrying that tone of absolute certainty I remembered from childhood. "She's younger, she's struggling financially, and she could actually use a space like this for her art studio. You have a perfectly good apartment in the city." My hand tightened on the phone. "Are you suggesting I give Emma my house?" "We're not suggesting anything," Dad said carefully. "We're telling you. You need to give this house to Emma. She deserves a chance at stability, and you have other options." The audacity took my breath away. They weren't asking me to consider Emma's needs or to help her find her own place. They were demanding I hand over the house I'd just purchased with my own money, my own savings, my own careful planning. "My answer," I said slowly, letting each word sink in, "is no." The explosion was immediate. Both parents started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a symphony of outrage and disbelief. How could I be so selfish? Didn't I understand that Emma was the one with real talent? Didn't I care about family? How could I live with myself knowing I had something Emma needed and refused to share it? I held the phone away from my ear, watching the last light fade from the sky over my meadow. Their voices became a distant buzz, the same arguments I'd heard my entire life repackaged for this new situation. Emma's needs, Emma's dreams, Emma's struggles, and my role as the reliable one, the understanding one, the one who would always sacrifice for the greater good of Emma's happiness. But I wasn't that person anymore. Somewhere between signing those closing papers and sitting on this porch that belonged to me, I'd become someone else. Someone who understood that love shouldn't require constant self-erasure. Someone who knew the difference between supporting family and enabling their expectation that I would always come last. "I have to go," I said, cutting through their continued protests. "I have my own life to live now." I hung up and turned off my phone. The silence that followed was different from any silence I'd ever experienced. Not the heavy quiet of resentment or the anxious hush of waiting for the next crisis. This was the peaceful silence of a woman finally alone with her own thoughts, in her own space, making her own choices. Over the next few days, the family campaign intensified. Emma called repeatedly, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails about how I was destroying the family and how Mom and Dad are so upset they can barely function. Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, called to inform me that I was breaking your parents' hearts and should think about what really matters. Even my cousin Jennifer, who I barely spoke to, sent a long text about family loyalty and sacrifice. But something interesting happened alongside the family pressure. The rest of the world kept celebrating my achievement. My coworkers threw me an impromptu congratulations party. Friends from college reached out to say how inspired they were by my independence. My neighbor from my city apartment stopped by to say how brave she thought I was, and how she'd always dreamed of making a similar move. The contrast was stark and illuminating. People who barely knew me could see that buying a house was an accomplishment worth celebrating. But my own family could only see it as a resource stolen from Emma, a betrayal of my designated role as the family's designated giver. Emma's social media campaign started on Wednesday. She didn't mention me directly, but her posts became increasingly pointed. Photos of her cramped apartment with captions about struggling artists who could really use family support. Inspirational quotes about sisters who lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. A particularly dramatic post about how some people get everything handed to them while others have to fight for every opportunity. The irony was almost funny. Emma, who had been handed art supplies, tuition assistance, unconditional family support, and priority treatment her entire life, was now painting herself as the disadvantaged sister, while I was apparently the privileged one for finally spending my own money on myself. But I was learning something important about family dynamics. When you stop playing your assigned role, everyone else's roles become unstable too. Without me as the reliable safety net, the family system that had seemed so solid began to show cracks. Dad called on Friday, his voice tired rather than angry. "Your mother hasn't been sleeping," he said without preamble. "She's convinced you hate us." "I don't hate you, Dad, but I'm not giving Emma my house." "She's not asking you to give it to her," he said, though we both knew that was exactly what they'd asked. "Maybe you could share it? Let her use it as a studio space? She could even help with the mortgage payments." "There is no mortgage, Dad. I paid cash. And no, Emma cannot use my house as a studio." A long pause. "I don't understand what's happened to you, Rebecca. This isn't like you." "Maybe this is exactly like me, and you just never noticed because it was more convenient to see me as the one who would always give in. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked what I wanted, instead of assuming I'd be fine with whatever was decided for me?" He couldn't answer, which was an answer in itself. By Sunday, exactly 1 week after my post had gone live, the family was in full crisis mode. Emma had apparently spent the weekend crying at my parents' house, dramatically mourning her lost opportunity and her selfish sister. Mom had called all the relatives to report my betrayal, painting a picture of poor Emma left struggling while cruel Rebecca hoarded resources. But something unexpected was happening in the extended family, too. Aunt Sarah, my dad's younger sister, called me directly. "I saw your house photos," she said. "It's gorgeous, honey. Good for you." "Thanks, Aunt Sarah. I love it here." "Listen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I think you should know. Your mom's been calling everyone trying to get them to pressure you about this house situation." I figured. Well, it's not working the way she probably hoped. A lot of us are actually really proud of you, and some of us have been watching this family dynamic for years, wondering when you'd finally stand up for yourself. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Really? Oh, honey, yes. Emma's always been the golden child, and you've always been expected to just manage. It's not healthy, and it's not fair. Some of us have wanted to say something for years. Why didn't you? Because it wasn't our place. But now that you've taken a stand, well, let's just say you have more support than your parents probably realize. After we hung up, I sat on my front porch as the sun set over my meadow, processing this revelation. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. Other people had seen what I'd lived with my entire life, and they understood why I'd finally said enough. 6 months later, my life had settled into a rhythm I never could have imagined. I'd kept my job in the city but negotiated a hybrid schedule that let me work from home 3 days a week. My country house had become exactly what I'd envisioned, a sanctuary where I could think clearly, create freely, and exist without constantly calculating everyone else's needs. Emma and I barely spoke, though I heard through the family grapevine that she'd eventually found a small studio space in the city and was doing well with her art. Mom and Dad still brought up the house occasionally, usually in the context of how much Emma could benefit from the space, but their pressure had decreased significantly after several relatives made it clear they supported my decision. The most surprising development was the friends I'd made in my new community. Sarah, my real estate agent, had introduced me to other young professionals who'd made similar moves to the country. I'd joined a book club, started volunteering at the local animal shelter, and discovered I had a talent for vegetable gardening. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up excited about my day instead of anxious about whose needs I'd have to manage. I made decisions based on my own preferences instead of everyone else's convenience. I spent money on things I wanted instead of things other people needed. And slowly, I began to understand the difference between selfishness and self-respect. Taking care of myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Setting boundaries wasn't cruel, it was healthy. Choosing my own happiness wasn't betraying my family. It was finally honoring the person I'd always been beneath the role I'd been assigned. The house that my parents insisted I should give to Emma had become the foundation of a life I'd never even known I wanted, and I was never giving it up.